Let's take a look at solving polynomial inequalities on a TI-84 plus calculator. So let's look at our steps. Polynomial inequalities. Now our first step is to get everything on the left side, 0 on the right side. Step 2, back to the left side, set each factor equal to 0, and solve. And these are going to be our critical values, critical numbers. It's where something potentially is happening. Step 3, using the critical values, the x-axis, and the graph, then determine your answer. That's pretty vague, but if you have a greater than or greater than or equal to, then your answer is above the x-axis. We'll see what I mean by that here in a minute. If you have a less than or less than or equal to, your answer is below the x-axis. There we go. Okay. Now if you have a less than or greater than, then you're going to use parentheses. If you have a less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you're going to use brackets. There we go. Okay, let's go through and use these steps then. Our first problem. We got x squared plus 4x minus 5 is less than 0. I'm not going to go over factoring here. If you don't know how to factor, then you need to cover that first. But if we go through our steps, first step, get everything on the left side, 0 on the right. Well, that's done. Our next step is to factor the left side. This factors as x plus 5 times x minus 1. Then it says set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So we got x plus 5 equal to 0, and we got x minus 1 equal to 0. So that gives us x is equal to negative 5 and x is equal to positive 1. And those are our critical values. Then it says using your critical values, the x-axis and the graph, then determine your answer. Well, here's negative 5 and here's positive 1. And these split them up in intervals. So this is splitting up in an interval. Clear over here is negative infinity. Clear over here is positive infinity. So this first interval goes from negative infinity to negative 5. Then this next interval is negative 5 to 1. Then this last one is 1 to positive infinity. So this is this horizontal line here is our x-axis. And those are our critical values. So using the critical values, x-axis, and now say the graph. Well, we want to go and graph. Once you got everything by itself on the left side, this is what you want to actually graph. So we'll plug that into our calculator, see what it looks like. So press y equals, press clear, and then we got x squared plus 4x minus 5, and then I'll press graph. Now notice where it's crossing the x-axis at. It's crossing at negative 5 and it's crossing at 1. Now I'm going to sketch this graph on here, and I don't care about making it precise in any form. So I just sketched it like that. So that's what our graph looks like. Okay. It says if you got a greater than or greater than equal to, answer is above the x-axis, less than equal to, answer is below. This problem is a less than. So less than says our answer is below the x-axis. Well, here's our x-axis. It's our x-axis right there. And in this interval, my graph is above And in this interval, my graph is above. But from -5 to 1, my graph is below. So this is going to be our answer right here because of the less than. And we're looking for where the answer is below the x-axis. So our answer is going to go from -5 to 1. Now it's a less than. This says that a less than, we're going to use parentheses, which means I put parentheses around that. And that's our answer. Now let's look at our second step, our second problem. We got x to the third plus 7x squared minus 4x minus 28 is less than 0. And our steps, get everything on the left side, 0 on the right side. That's done. Second step, factor the left side, then set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Well, this is grouping. We've got 4 more terms. There's no GCF. So group first 2 terms together, group last 2 terms together. Now looking at my first group, the GCF of that is x squared. So I'm going to factor on x squared, and that gives me x plus 7. For my second group, they're both divisible by 4. My first term is negative, so the GCF is a -4. And that gives us x plus 7. Now remember, our goal with grouping is to get this parentheses the same as this, which they are. So I'll factor out the x plus 7 out in front. And to see what goes in your second set of parentheses, you can now cross out these x plus 7s. And what isn't crossed out is what goes right here, which is x squared minus 4. That was grouping. Well, 2 terms with a minus between it. Dots, difference 2 squares. So it factors as x plus 7 times x plus 2 times x minus 2 is less than 0. Now we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So we got x plus 7 is equal to 0. We got x plus 2 is equal to 0. And we got x minus 2 is equal to 0. So that gives us x equals -7, x is equal to -2, and x is equal to a positive 2. Okay, so here's our -7, here's -2, and here's positive 2. Remember, these split them up into intervals, like this. Clear over here is -infinity, clear over here is positive infinity. You have to arrange your critical values from smallest value to largest value, so -7, -2 to 2. Now we want to graph this and see what it looks like. Now what we want to graph is right up here when you got 0 by itself on the right side. So this is where we're going to plug in. Excuse me. Okay, so we're going to go, so I can get my calculator moved over. There we go. Press y equals, press clear. Then we're going to do x caret 3 for the x to the third plus 7x squared minus 4x minus 28. And then we'll press graph. And look where it's crossing, -7, -2, and positive 2. Now, we can see our graph's going up, then slowly going in, so we kind of get a feel for it. It's going up here, reaching some point, turning back around, coming down here, reaching some low point, turning around, coming back up. You could do some zooming if you wanted to confirm that, but it's pretty obvious, I think. So I'm going to sketch it. We do not want to sketch it precise in any sense. So between -7 and -2, you see it's going up and coming back down. It's going up, coming back down. Passing through -2. Between -2 and 2, it's going down somewhere and then turning around. So it's turning around and then passing through positive 2 like that. Again, do not spend any kind of amount of time trying to draw that correctly. We don't care about that. Now this is a less than. Less than says the answer is below the x-axis. Below the x-axis. Well, my graph is below the x-axis here, and it's also below the x-axis right here. So this interval is from -infinity to -7, and this interval is from -2 to positive 2. Now infinities always have parentheses on them. This is a less than. Less than says we use parentheses, so the rest of these will be parentheses. If it had been less than or equal to, we would have put brackets on these. And then if you got two intervals in your answer, you put a union symbol in between them. And that's our answer. And that's solving polynomial inequalities with the help of TI-84 plus calculator.